with us the whole time anyway, but we just wanted to let you know that was what the plan was here. And
so actually, we've got two folks that are going to come in and join us from Google. So Zach is going to be on the same call with Robin, and Zach's going to talk about the Google Podcasts app on Android and iOS, but mainly iOS. And then also Robin is going to come in and talk about the new Google Podcast Manager area that was announced yesterday.
Okay. I'm almost ready, Rob. Sorry, I've got us up on multiple stream areas today too, because I knew we were going to have a big crowd for this. So I added some additional streaming places.
So how does this work? You do it on Skype and you send the stream to different spots like an iTunes RSS feed?
We use Wowza, and yeah,
it's live. It's actually live.
Yeah, and we transcode to today we're going to about 8 different locations. So
wow.
That's awesome. Live streaming video locations.
Yeah. All right. So all the streams are up. Let me hit record. We'll get going here. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Todd Cochran. I want to welcome you to the new media show. We got a great show lined up for you today. Lots of stuff to talk about. So it's going to be, I'm sure we're going to go the full 90 minutes. I have no doubt. So strap in. We got a good show for you. Rob, good morning. It's not morning. It's afternoon. How are you, Rob?
Yeah, it's going fine, Todd. Yeah, we've got an exciting show here. We've got Ronsley Vaz from the We Are Podcasts kind of event, virtual podcasting event. Actually, it started out as a real world event over the last couple of years, I believe, for Ronsley. But you've kind of moved it into being a virtual event now. It's at wearepodcast.com. But Ronsley, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks. Yeah, we've been going since 2015. We've started the same year as Podcast Movement, I think, in Australia. Right. And every year we've had some amazing friends. Gives you wings, Todd.
It
does. It's my official show drink.
Todd, my friends come from all over the world to Australia to speak at We Are Podcast. So this year it's been 6 weeks in the pivot. So it's always interesting.
So it's early in the morning there in Australia, and you're having the same lockdown as we are. And of course, I've got some friends down in Australia. They're telling me about everything that's going on there. So what has been the pivot? What is your guys's, what's going to happen with the conference then?
So 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, when I closed that Podfest, I sent all the speakers to Brisbane a video, and I said, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. We're still going to go ahead. And a week later, I had to retract everything. So I decided if I was going to retract everything, I was going to have something for them to be at. So I pivoted. I moved the day by 3 weeks. So it's on the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of May. And I kind of decided that I didn't want it to be an online summit like what has been done before. I really wanted to solve the problem of doing a multi-speaker, multi-stream event with high engagement, so replicating the in-person engagement. So having people register, having people, if the speakers, people want to talk to the speaker, we can say, Jordan Harbinger's done, but if you want to talk to him, you can go outside. Here's a link to a different room so you can have a chat. So I'm trying to recreate everything from a real live event into the virtual world. So that's been keeping me busy for sure.
Yeah, are you seeing that it's kind of the way of the future more? I mean, I think that our real world events are still going to be with us once things start to kind of open up more again. But do you think that this is a fundamental shift that we're seeing, that more and more events are going to be going this direction and there's going to be fewer real world events?
I think everything is going to change. I think everything we know and how we do business and how we value things are going to change. If I just take, for example, in a bigger picture, the US is very vocal about how much money they spend on defense a year and how much of the GDP is spent on defense. But when something like this hit, what is the use of that kind of budget being put towards,
right?
That kind of like. So I think everything we do and the way we see things we're gonna change. The values are gonna change. I mean, I think there's going to be more feeling. I think people are more connecting with. It's also really interesting. Yes, we've not had in-person connection, but I've had more Zoom connections with more people that I would have never spoken to as well in the last while, and I've connected with family, and it's been quite an interesting turn. But I do think everything is going to change. I think being adaptable during this phase is probably the biggest skill I would suggest to people.
So I'm kind of curious, you say you're trying to have the same feel of an event, and a lot of us have been talking about that. How are you actually going to accomplish that technology-wise?
Well, we're working with different platforms right now. We're still making things up as we go, so it's so new. I believe Zoom can have all that technology, but the issue is not necessarily with the video platform technology, because there's different ones like this one. There are different ones where you can actually have the conversations. The issue is, I suppose, how to bring everyone together in comms. Like, how can, for example, I speak only to the speakers and give them directions, or only to a certain attendee type, or only to the team. And the comms is the issue, to say, well, here is where session 5 of before the podcast stream is going to be, and here's where you go to get it. So just so that everyone's on the same page. And the different ways of doing it, I suppose, is an old school way of doing it, and saying, here's the page that you got to remember the URL. Every new update will be on the URL. There are different other apps. I think Hoover is another one. It could be put onto Discord or Slack. There's all these different ways, but then I believe Zoom seems to be the most reliable at this stage from the research I've done.
The challenge that we've seen over the years in any of these virtual conferences is, if you're going to have multi-tracks, it's almost forget it, because people are, you're not at the event, you're in different time zones. There's all kinds of craziness going on, and for me to say, okay, I'm gonna go listen to this track, and this track, it's just too much minutia and too much distraction of people. And there's, where I'd go to a conference, I'm dedicated. I'm there 8-10 hours. I'm focused.
It's about focus, right?
Yeah, it's about focus. And the problem is, on virtual, there's no focus. And even when I used to do 24-hour shows, I used to do one of those, sit in a seat for 24 hours and have someone new come in every 30 minutes. You'd have 20, 30, 40, 50 people wander in, 20, 30, 40, 50 wander out. So there was always this moving target depending on time zone and everything else. And it was fun to do it that way. But I can't even imagine trying to do a multi-track conference remotely at this point. It just, you end up with 3 people in a room, and then people are like, well, wow, that's,
It depends. It depends on how the organizer goes around setting the frame, I suppose. So if you, the initial, there's only 2 streams, and it's about focus. It's before the podcast and after the podcast. So if you don't have a podcast, or you're thinking about a podcast, or you're about to launch, you're in stream 1. If you already have a show and you're thinking of either pivoting or growing or monetizing or whatever else, then you're in stream 2. So it's quite simple. And there's like 7 times or 7 sessions where there's keynotes, so that people come together. I don't see that as too hard, to be honest. I think that is quite simple. If the tracks, for example, were random, and I think that hard, like if they were like, 8, 10, 12 tracks, and then that becomes quite hard to.
Yeah, being that you only got 2 tracks, it's a little bit more manageable.
Right.
And so then the challenge then becomes time zones. So because don't care at 1:00 in the morning, I'm done. You're 5 o'clock in the morning. You're drinking coffee. You're just waking up. I'm 3:13. I'm wrapping up the end of my day. So the time zone issue is even here in the United States is tight enough. But you're having a conference down in Australia, and usually we'd have mostly Australians down there, except for the speakers. So maybe it's not an issue.
Well, it gets back to also, Todd, what's live versus what's on demand too. I mean, the on-demand part of it kind of can bridge all those time zones, but if it's live, I agree with you. I think it presents challenges around growing. It's just like with this show, is our audience as big in Australia right now as it is in the United States? It's not, right?
But also for a conference, though, on demand can't really be a model, because how do you interact with an audience that may be asking questions? I don't know. I guess it depends on the session. If it's just a one person giving a presentation, well, maybe Q&A is at the end and the host can be there.
Right.
I don't know. But if it's a panel, it's curious. It's going to be interesting to see how you guys do it. That's for sure.
Well, and I think, Todd, I mean, there really hasn't been an emphasis on this up till now.
No.
And some innovation and some new way of thinking about this process is really needed. And I think what Ronsley's trying to do here is trying to push the envelope on that. Let's see if we can find a model that can work with people on a global scale.
Are you going to have a stream set up for in the hall discussions so that people can go off and have those types? Because that's what I go to conference for, is as much the in-hall discussions as and not necessarily with speakers, but fellow podcasters. Are you going to be working on that as well? Or
So the conference was created for the U.S. time zone. So it's actually 1:30 p.m. Pacific time to 9 p.m. Pacific time. So it's an afternoon conference, which makes it a morning conference for Australia, which makes the dinner and the lunch times overlap. That's how we've kind of set the time for the event. And it is live. I actually really, really want to make it I want to make it engaging. So the engagement is something that I'm super interested in. I'm not interested in just creating the content, because virtual events do that anyway. Online summits do that anyway. I'm actually after bringing the people together. Now, it might not work. I've done a lot of things and tried a lot of things that have not worked. But I don't think I would have had the energy to do something that was just done before, I suppose, maybe. So this is what we're trying. We'll see how we go.
See how it goes.
In a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And the bigger challenge is you're actually charging for this, for a virtual conference. So how's that going? How's your sales going?
Well, not as well as we thought it would, to be honest. It's not like a normal event where people plan and they can't have accommodation and flights and stuff to book pre-event. So we're hoping that, but we wanted to make it different. I mean, the money is not necessarily about making money on the ticket. It's actually about the person valuing what's in front of them. And if we can't communicate that, then that's our problem. That's an issue that we are trying to solve actually on an everyday basis, because it's so new. So that's what we're tweaking every time, is can they understand what we're trying to create when they get the message? I'm not sure what the question is, but I forgot what my train of thought was.
So is this going to be all mostly browser based, or are you going to be working with any mobile apps with this as well?
So we're still figuring it out. I had a conversation with Hoover yesterday. There's Event Mobi. There's quite a few ones, and there are some that are really interesting. Like Hoover, for example, can use Zoom on the inside. So Hoover is just the event management app, which allows us to have everything in one place, and then we still run the Zoom rooms from behind, which is actually what we're most comfortable with at this stage, and what we've kind of been practicing for breakout rooms and that kind of stuff. So we'd prefer to use Zoom at this stage. And from what I see, I've only seen Hoover yesterday, so it seems like that might be the option.
I'm looking at your speaker list. I see a few Americans on that list. What's the breakup? A lot of these folks I've never heard of. So are some of these folks out of Australia too? So
yeah, it's a mixture of like leading people within marketing, business, and podcasting. And I wanted to make the event primarily for podcasters that were about brands and businesses. They were looking to sustain their podcast. They were not looking for just a hobby show, and they were kind of serious about how to sustain their art, and they wanted to make art. So bringing these people together has been quite amazing. I think the lineup is something that I built the event myself, to be honest. And so some of them, so Daniel Priestley, for example, is from the UK. He's built a multi-million-dollar business and runs the Dent podcast. Dan Martell, SaaS, has got an amazing show. David Meltzer has got the playbook, which he uses to sign sports big, like multi-million-dollar clients, which is quite interesting. James Cridlin writes for Pod News.
There's
JJ
one name
Virgins.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
JJ Virgin, Jordan Harbinger. I'm sure you know more.
Yeah, everybody knows Jordan.
Yeah, I think I would say at least a third of them. I've seen their names in the podcasting space before. I mean, at least third to half of them. Yeah.
And it's not.
So,
For me, it's like I know the face, have no idea what show or what they do. So that sometimes you see the face, you don't know what their shows are about. But so that's interesting. So oftentimes now we're seeing podcasters are, the big question, and it's good that you're having a beginner track, because that seems to be, from at least the latest conferences that I've been to, have been the most full of the folks that are just getting started. And the advanced tracks were the ones that I was actually kind of surprised there wasn't that many people, because I think people that have been in the space long enough have probably heard just about everything they've ever wanted to hear about advanced, and the beginners are trying to suck up all that beginner information. So I'd be curious to see how your weight is on registrations and folks that are in the beginner track and those that are in the advanced track.
Yeah, and so it's also really interesting because we've got a mastermind ticket, which is just under $1,000. And that ticket is being sold more for the advanced track. So there's more people who already have shows that are buying those tickets, which is fascinating.
The word mastermind is a word that I have banished from my dictionary.
So who's actually doing the mastermind course? Is that being done by yourself, or is that being done by a certain group that is in the conference itself?
So even those are like longer sessions with with different other speakers. For example, they're doing an hour on there's an hour on writing your book, for example. There's an hour on being able to pitch. I mean, pitching is really interesting, right? As business owners, or like as art creators or podcast creators, we get asked one question most often: what do you do? And that's one question that we don't know the answer. So that was a really interesting session. So we're just putting sessions in there which will actually benefit them as a group, as a mastermind. So the mastermind seems to be the established podcaster business owners who are kind of going, well, I could benefit from being in a room with other podcaster business owners.
Yeah. I don't know who.
So is it going to go beyond just the day of the event itself? I mean, are those mastermind relationships going to extend beyond just those few days?
So we've got at the back end of this, we are looking to create We Are Members, which is a membership, like a gym membership for business owner podcasters. And in there, we give them a monthly tactic. We have the speakers are already in there, and they're giving like an hour of their time a year. So we're creating that membership group, people who want to keep going. We've been running this since 2015, and we've never actually sold anything. at We Are Podcast. So this is the first time we're thinking like this could be a really good potential revenue stream, because the main revenue stream for me is my agency, and this was just a fun thing I did.
Awesome. We got about 3 minutes here before we've got to wrap up. Why don't you tell everyone? So again, the dates are May 21 through 23rd, so it's just 15 days away. And so they can go to wearepodcast.com. And it redirects to a different site, but wearepodcast.com is the place to go, right?
Correct. When you have 6 weeks to do it, it doesn't always work in your favor. So we've patched whatever we could together and literally got stuff up. So yeah, wearepodcast.com will take you here. It is basically for people who want to interact with others, and build connections and have a good time. And
right.
So I'm seeing.
Thank you for having me.
You've got I'm assuming some of these folks here with the headlines are some of your keynote speakers: Jordan, David Meltzer, Melissa Amberanzi, Hal Elderod, JJ Virgin, Emily Fletcher, Dan Martell, Dan Fleischman. Are those your keynoters or keynote speakers?
Some of them are.
Some of them are, yeah.
But they're the ones with the most impressive resumes, I suppose.
Gotcha. And it looks like you've got 5, 9, like 45 speakers over 3 days then. So are you going, is it basically, so again, it's going to be what time is the session, or what time is the event, from what time to what time?
It's 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Pacific time.
So May 21, 22, and 23 is a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And so I guess if you can get off work, that is, or maybe you aren't working. Rob and I always tell folks that are holding conferences, do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That way the people that are working can take off Friday and then go to both Saturday and Sunday events. But it's kind of hard because you guys are in Australia, so you're already a day ahead.
Yeah, you're a day
so
ahead already.
So it's like you can't win one way or the other, can you?
Right. Yeah, that's the challenge of the time zones on a global basis.
Yeah.
Is that people are working in different days. Yeah,
but
that's for sure.
So awesome. So what are you expecting then, attendance-wise? Or any numbers?
Well, when we first started, we thought we'd get 1,000 people, and that number has kept going down. So we are hoping for the best. To be honest, there's a good chance that people might look at this whole thing and go, "This is the dumbass idea," and it's fine. But I think that just looking at the ticket sales so far, it seems like it'll go ahead. So yeah,
definitely need to get the word out. I didn't even know about the conference, and I run Blueberry Podcasting, so this is news to me today. So yeah, need to get the word out for us so we can help spread the word for you.
Well, that's what's great about Todd having Ronsley on the show today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? To kind of get the word out. I mean, I would love to see more virtual conferences succeed.
Me too.
I think we have to wonder, in the bigger picture of things, what Podcast Movement's going to do, right? I mean, you start looking at what the prospects are of doing a large public event like that, where everybody gets together, is a little bit iffy right now. So what could they do, right? And this could be one way of finding out.
How can they reach out to you? Is there an email address they can contact you, or Facebook or Twitter? Or?
Yeah, I mean, Ronsley, I don't know whether there's another Ronsley. I don't think the world's ready for that. But Ronsley at wearepodcast.com, or facebook.com/Ronsley should get you to me.
Well, we'll be definitely talking about your event. And sorry, we only had 30 minutes or here to spend, not even quite that, but Google I think they're already bouncing on the door here. But hey, thanks for coming on.
I appreciate the end.
Yeah, thanks for waking up early too.
Yeah, thanks, Ronsley. And good luck with the event.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, boys.
All right, sir. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Well, sounds like a fun event. I'm going to have to sign up for it.
Yeah. No, I think, I would love to see an event like this be successful. I think it is pushing the envelope on what's possible here. We haven't really played around with this stuff as much as I think some people have tried in the past, and I know that that there's a lot of kind of pushback on these concepts as well around skepticism about whether or not they can be successful or not, and whether or not people have time in their day to fit in something like this without really the focus that we typically can apply to a real world event. So I think it's a really interesting question, and I think it really depends on how it's done, and what the speakers are, what the marketing is behind it. I think there's a lot of areas that you have to wonder. And I look at this type of event, and I think, well, if this proves to be something that makes some sense, I wonder if Podcast Movement may be considering something similar to this, and what that would do to their event, especially when they have 30,000+ people on their Facebook group.
Hey, Rob. Robin's with us now. So,
hey, Robin. Thank you for joining us. Robin is a product manager over at Google Podcasts, and he volunteered to jump on the line and join us to talk about his big announcement that came out yesterday about the Google Podcast Manager area. So, Robin, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Zach is about to join as well.
Okay.
And he'll be able to speak to some of the new and fun Google Podcasts related launches that we had a month or two back.
So is he going to join you, or how are you guys going to? Is he going to call into?
He's going to join the Skype.
Yeah. They're both going to be on the same call, Todd.
All right, so that should be interesting because I've never done that here with this. So we'll see what happens when. Do I have to invite Zach to join the call, or how does that work in Skype?
No, I think he's going to join him in the room there, right? Is that right or not? No, or two separate callers coming in. Robin, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, two separate callers.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we may have to. We may have to drop you and just bring Zach in separately. So we'll see on that.
Well, there's Zach, and we lost Robin.
Right. So is there a way that we can combine those into one conference?
I don't. I've never brought two people into Skype at once. So we've always only brought one in at a time. So
I know. Yeah, I know it supports it though, Todd. It's just a matter of doing it somehow. So,
yeah, Zach, maybe you can help. Sorry, but we've never done two people at once on Skype on the same call. So
interesting. Are we on the air?
Yeah, we are
on the call. Okay.
Yeah.
Because if we're going to do a demo on the iPhone app, then that'll also involve bringing me in again.
Right. Yeah, I think we're trying to get it set up here.
All right. There it goes. We go split screen.
Oh, great.
Oh, this is, hey, we just broke ground here. We've never done that here on the show before. So
that's great.
Teaching old dogs new tricks. So I can actually even bring you both up on the screen. Let me see if I can. There we go. I can bring you up front and center. Now you guys will just see yourself, but everyone can see both of you. But okay, so we got Google team in the house. Exciting stuff, guys. What you launched yesterday. Matter of fact, my team has been going over it, and I've got some questions for you later. But let's talk about the what you guys have brought to market and the announcement.
Yeah.
Sure.
So.
I was just going to say that Zach Renault Whedon has joined us also. So
yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Hey there, Robin. I think there's a little echo. I'm not sure if it's. I'll go ahead and I doubt it's from me because I have headphones. But if someone's got a live speaker, I was hearing some echo.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah.
If no one else hears it, it's fine.
Yeah, we're not hearing it on this end for sure.
Right.
All right.
Great. So I'll quickly give you guys a bit of an intro of Google Podcast Manager and how we got to where we were, how we are. So firstly, we know that people are listening to podcasts differently now in more places than ever before. When we started building out our first product, podcasters, we thought that giving podcasters an insight into evolving listening habits was really important. And that actually helped us prioritize what we were building. And then, Rob, I think I actually met you at Podcast Movement last year. And we met lots of podcasters there. And a lot of them wanted to basically make it easier to manage their content on Google. They didn't know which feeds Google used. They really wanted to understand how listeners on Google products engage with their content. So the plan was for Podcast Manager was basically make it easier for them to submit, verify their podcast was on Google, and get a window into their audience behavior.
That's great.
And this is like the first step, more to come. We have a team that's really focused on giving publishers more control over their content. The two big themes are kind of making sure, helping them connect them with their listeners, and helping publishers get more of a control and actually grow their businesses, because we know it's a difficult time for everyone right now.
Hey, Todd, can you pull up the new Google Manager?
Yeah, I'm trying to do so, I'm trying to go to the main site, but it just, as soon as I log, I'm trying to show the homepage, but it's bringing me in to see maybe I got to bring up an incognito window.
If you do /about, that would probably work best.
Okay.
So podcastmanager.google.com.
There we go. That's what it is.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's going to have it up on the screen, and then you can talk your way through it.
So we're really focused on allowing podcasters to get to know their audience better. We have some really useful analytics. Firstly, you can like now submit your new shows on Podcast Manager, and you can claim and verify your ownership. So you can also reach out to Google if you think the feed that we're serving is the wrong one. We have a whole form where you can reach out to us. You can see the number of plays of your show per episode, the number of minutes played, as well as when a new episode is launched. I think one of the coolest things that we have in this launch, which is different than pretty much all the analytics folks out there, is a device breakdown. If you just scroll a bit.
Well, I could show you the new media shows page, but go ahead.
This really speaks to the emerging behavior that I mentioned before, and we're seeing these interesting trends right now while lots of people are in shelter in place. They're like, obviously, people now are listening at home. They're listening on like their laptop. They're listening on their smart speakers, which is a very different behavior that you can actually track on Podcast Manager. So for the new media show, I can see you have a lot of phone listening.
100%.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that might change. You can actually go on the date picker. If you go up, you can see how it has changed, like maybe over the past year or like 90 days. So because you've just claimed and verified your show, you don't have as much data as you would in the future. But you can see how as it progresses. So just a quick view on the screen. It shows you the number of plays, minutes played, and per episode. It also shows you the percentage of average played. You can see whether each episode is like listeners are getting through each episode. And when you click on that, there's an actual audience retention. So the coolest thing is here, I think, is like when you see sharp drop, you can actually like click on the line. If you click on the line, and the podcast show actually plays.
Yeah,
so
it
you can
does.
identify what did you say that made people
leave,
tune out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
What's interesting here is I did some A/B comparison between the stats that from our IB certified stats and what you guys collect, and the number is not even close. So I'm kind of concerned about that. So it just makes it, it did bring in, we were already kind of talking about that already. So I understand though that this is probably, is this only tracking the the Google Podcast app? But again, you're saying you're also tracking tablet, desktop, smart speakers, and others. So I would expected that there would have been Chrome plays in there too.
Yeah, so it's any play through the Google Podcast Player. So that would mean the podcast app, of course, as well as when you ask your assistant or Google Assistant to play a podcast, we track that as well.
All right, so definitely not. So this show has. I won't talk about the other apps per se, but this show has a pretty good following on a couple of other apps. So we really have to, when we're going to look down in the stats, then we really need to look down deep and look at specifically the Google Podcast app and Chrome and the smart speaker and any Android tablets that are, because this is again, and I don't want to do apples comparison. This is kind of the challenge we have even with the other big 800-pound gorilla, is that we only see, for example, their app. We don't see everything. So it's going to give us that snapshot of stuff that you guys specifically can track and not necessarily what the other apps are doing. So just so the audience is clear.
Yeah. So, and also, I wanted to mention too about the phone category, because that can be listening in the iOS or Android app,
right,
as well as a browser, right? So are you guys planning on breaking that out between those two?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. Nothing that is right. Like we haven't launched it, of course. Nothing to announce right now, but you can see that could be if that's useful for podcasters, and if that's like a requested feature, of course, something that we can work on.
So what's the typical data set range that a podcaster is usually looking at when they see these numbers? Is it when you submitted your podcast to them, or they submitted it to you guys, or at what? I mean, if you guys have had it for a long time, have you guys been capturing data and it's just a matter of migrating more data into the tool, or where is that cutoff point?
So we will give you a certain amount of history before you verify. We'll give you, I think it's 28 days of listening data. When and we noticed this with other analytics tools, like some analytics tools don't give you any historical data.
Right.
And I found that really annoying when I signed up to those analytics tools, especially if your show is already out there. So I prioritize the fact that hey, we want to make sure an experience, we have a good experience on day zero for podcasters, and we have the tool is useful straight away.
One thing I will say though that is really, really remarkable here, and it's something I tell podcasters all the time: be careful what you wish for when it comes to data. Because even this show, let's take this episode number 367.
Right.
And we look at this show and its audience retention. And, we were real good up to about 9 minutes. I better have my advertising in 9 minutes, because I lose 10% at 12 minutes. I lose another, up to 40% loss by, 40 minutes in. And then I've lost 60% of the audience by an hour 12 in. So when podcasters have been really wanting this information, which to me, this is like the holy grail of data, I always tell them, hey, you better, and again, I understand I can go to this point here and say, okay, why did I lose people?
And Todd, if you go back to the 16-minute mark?
Right.
What was that spike right there that jumped it back up?
Yeah,
again?
someone, what happened? So, it's the devil's in the details, but these are the kind of details that, if someone gets some significant traction on Google, they're going to really be able to make very intelligent decisions on their show.
But Todd, it could just be duration. It doesn't. It's hard to really know if it's content, right?
I go back to the history I have with looking at the data we have in our stats, where we were actually looking at where people punch out when they're actively listening, because the media is being chunked out, and I can look at the log files at Blueberry and I can see where someone punched. And again, it's already cached ahead a little bit, so it's not a complete accurate look. It's a poor man's version of this is what I have at Blueberry, because I don't have the client side data. But again, you can make decision marks. If if your audience drops off at 45 minutes and drops like a rock, well, there's something in your show that you did at 45 minutes to cause that audience to leave. I think podcasters are going to be able to make very valuable, as they grow the data, they're going to be able to make very valuable decisions on their content and what pissed somebody off, or where they lost them, or whatever reason caused someone to quit listening. There's nothing like this. Apple gives it to you in a certain, but no one's giving it to you like this.
But Todd, what you're actually looking there is people starting and stopping a progressive download playback experience, right? Mainly, is that true?
Well, are you guys? No, that's the question. Are you guys looking at the ones that have subscribed and downloaded, or are you only looking at those that have actively hit play?
It's people who have specifically played the podcast. So it's streams. Yeah, it's not offline download data. But we, of course, we have. So it's someone who's actively listening to the podcast.
Right.
Robin, that, just to clarify, that still counts download.
Yes,
if I download and then I listen, it would be counted. But if I download and I never listen, it would not.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
So if they've downloaded and played, you're still covering it here.
Exactly.
Oh.
Really? That's awesome. Great job, guys.
Bravo. Bravo.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. And that
right.
Okay. Everyone listening. We've been telling you for the last 5 years or more, if you are not promoting subscribing to your show on an Android device, you're screwing yourself, because you're leaving half the world out, and now you got this valuable data. Listen to my show on Google Podcast app. Listen to my show on Google Podcast. I'm not going to be promoting Overcast or Pocket Cast or any of those other apps. I'm going to say, listen to my show on Google Podcast app, because what am I going to get? I'm getting this.
You're going to get great.
I'm getting this.
Great data out of it. Right?
And it's like,
right.
This is, and being able to listen to average played, all that info, again, man, this is really good, guys. It really, really is.
Yeah.
Thanks. We're just focused on making sure that we can help you make the best content out there. So
let's talk a little bit more about other areas of the tool too. So you can submit a podcast through this tool too, correct? And what's that process?
Exactly. So you can. There's no review process. Of course, the way that the Google Podcast works is we crawl an index. If your show is a brand new show and it's hasn't appeared on Google Podcast, we will kind of detect that, and we will submit the show to our kind of feeds pipeline, and hopefully it will appear in a couple of days directly through the tool, and we'll you will see whether it is actually live, either by going directly to the podcast app or the podcast manager, where you'll actually start seeing your data.
So here's some feedback I got from. Let me go find this here real quick. Oh my God, I had this already up in Slack. So what we found already, and this is our testing. So we're finding that people that have more than one podcast on a website, as an example, this show has two podcasts, as an audio podcast and a video podcast. There, and we published that on this show combined. And again, I know you guys are focused on audio here, but as an example, if you look at this show, we've got an audio version and a podcast version. These are true. They have RSS feeds assigned to both, and there is true media connected to the RSS feed. So when I went and tried to claim the video version of this, it said, we don't recognize that. We only recognize the basically we're thinking your video version is the audio version. And we've seen other people that have had two different separate shows on websites where one is on a specific category. Let's say they're using category podcasting, and there's two feeds for two separate shows that they're having challenges in submitting multiple shows from a single episode. So I think, we've found a few quirks, and we'd like to submit some of these to you guys to look at. So what's going to be the best way for us to say, hey, we've seen something weird going on here. How do we get help in having you guys look at that?
So great question. And I know that some of these, there's quite a lot of complications for podcasters out there, especially with feeds. We actually, you can actually reach out to us with a form. I can ping this to you, and you can share it in the show notes. If you think the feed that we're serving is the wrong one. And we have like a pretty detailed help center, which can kind of walk you through the process. So yeah, we're here to help. We're here to take on feedback.
Sure.
So does this mean that those that have video podcast feeds shouldn't even try and submit because you guys aren't recognizing those, or are you guys intending on supporting the video podcast feeds?
So if there's an audio version, I would recommend them to kind of submit and claim the audio version.
Okay.
Yeah, because basically when I entered the video feed here, it saw it, it knew about it, but it said, it gave me a little note and said, hey, we're using this instead, which pointed towards the audio feed. So I was impressed that it was intelligent enough to say, oh yeah, we know you got this, but here's the point towards the audio feed. Right. So, and I did like to ask the other option too, is I can add people. Rob, I can add you to our account, and you can look at the Google stats with me. So it's not limited to just one person.
Yeah, no, that's great. So what is your kind of submissions process? What does a podcaster have to go through to get a feed added? I saw that there's like a verification code that has to be added. Are you going to send an email follow-up when it's been added? What's kind of that process?
Yeah, so when you go through the flow, you type in your RSS feed, and we kind of share with you a preview of the RSS feed. Basically show you the cover art, the number of like the first 10 episodes or so, to make sure that this is the feed that you're wanting to claim. And then we from the RSS feed we show the kind of iTunes email owner, like the email in the RSS feed, and we send an email to that email address, sharing the verification code, and then you just plug in a 6-digit number, I think it is, and claim that feed.
I can actually show it on here, and so that if people haven't seen it, this is the feed I've got in here is one of my shows that's part of my team, but I don't own this show, so I'm just going to show this so basically you enter the feed, Rob, for a new or existing show here, and seeing that this one is existing, you just click next, and it comes up and it shows you the album art title, description, and they got information here on guidelines if you have edits on how to make changes, so that if something doesn't look right, you can change your settings with your podcasting provider. And then there's next steps. So the email address this is the email address that's in the RSS feed. And it says down here, the owner of this email address will see your podcast manager email address. So basically, if I try to send this code, it'll send the code, but it's going to send this over to Kirk. Kirk's going to get it, and he'll have to send me the code back in order to be added to this list. Kirk can go through this process himself, and if I'm logged in right now in Google under my geeknews@gmail.com address. So I was in it with Todd at blueberry.com for a while, and of course it said, hey, it didn't match, but as soon as I logged into my Google account and it matched the feed address, it basically allowed me to claim it instantly because we were linked to it. Knew that I was geeknews@gmail.com. They knew my feed had geeknews@gmail.com. So it instantly, but because in this instance, if I click this, it's going to send a code to this address, and he'll have to send me the code to let me have access to this listing. And he should go through.
That's a good security measure.
Right. Yeah. And I can add you also manually once the show is listed. So don't want to steal the thunder here, but this is really well thought out, in my opinion. And how this.
One thing also that stands out here is, Google has had tools like this in the past for webmasters and people who are tracking the performance of their website on Google search. And so the team that developed this also included the same team that has built and managed those tools. So a lot of the smarts that you see there is actually being able to stand on the shoulders of infrastructure that previously existed and with the folks who themselves built it. So certainly when I use the product as well, I noticed from Robin and the whole team that there was a lot of collaboration with other tools in search and for webmasters.
So I wanted to have access last night, Rob, to Podcast Insider's thing, and I went through the same thing, and I told Mike I sent you the code, and Mike forgot about it. So that's basically, it's still awaiting in my manager to be able to claim that show. So if he sends me the code over, I don't know if it times out, but if he sends me the code from the email he got, then I can claim it, and not necessarily claim it, but be added on to a listing. So, but if you don't, it's just going to sit there in perpetuity and not let you have access.
So, I wanted to also ask, how far back, how many episodes are you guys following in a particular feed? Is there a limit to that, or is that going to be expanding over time?
There's no limit to that.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
All right. So therein lies the question. Okay, you guys just put me in a bad spot. So
totally intended, Todd.
No, here's the deal. Okay, so the cat's out of the bag. So a podcaster now can have 1,000 episodes in his feed.
Right. Well, they've always been able to do that. Todd.
Okay, but this causes mayhem because what's going to happen is Google's going to be able to take 1,000 episodes. I'm all for it. All right, I'm great. We can have 1,000. There's why this $2.99 limit was ever put in place. Well, we know why, because the feed takes forever to load and the overhead on the websites. And, if you're running on a $2.99 DreamHost account and that feed is 3 megs large with 1,000 episodes in it, and it's hit 1,000 times in an hour, they're going to run into problems. And
so maybe it helps to explain a little bit about how Google Podcast works from an indexing perspective. So the MP3 files are streamed directly from the host. So you get all the stats not only in Google Podcast Manager for Google Podcast properties, but also from your hosting provider across all the properties that people might listen on. But the RSS feed itself will be cached. So if you have 10,000 episodes, it's not like everyone's cell phone is downloading 10,000 episodes. It's all sort of proxied through Google, and we can paginate as needed so that only certain parts of the feed are loading for people who are only looking at those parts of the feed. And I think that we're not the only ones who do that. There are other apps that also cache so that things are more efficient on the consumer side.
So what you're really telling me there, for those that don't understand what was just said, is they're not going to grab your whole feed. They're going to grab the top header of it and look for the new episodes and then add that to your cache. You're not going to go load the whole feed again.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not sure I would commit to exactly how the technology is going to work, but the idea of 10,000 people at once all hitting the feed is something that we can avoid.
All right.
Right. Well, and Todd, they're also pulling that metadata so they can use it for the index too.
I understand that.
Yeah. So the bigger question is,
can I flush that cache?
Well, and I know that you guys are also doing some transcription stuff. Is there going to be any surfacing? And I know maybe this is a future-looking question here, and you can answer it or not. But do you foresee yourself showing transcription data in these accounts as well?
So I guess there are kind of three reasons to be really excited about Podcast Manager. I think one is just the ability to manage your feed. In terms of how it exists on Google Podcasts and sort of to submit new feeds, all that stuff. Another is to see analytics when new things come out, a new episode comes out, see how it performs, dig into the data as you guys demonstrated, maybe to a deeper degree in some cases than you could otherwise. But the reason that makes me really excited as someone thinking about the podcast app and the consumer experience is now there's actually a relationship between Google Podcasts and podcasts. And so there's a place that people can go to manage their presence on Google Podcasts and also get information that's not just analytics. And so when you talk about the transcript, that's one. I know the last time we saw each other in person was at Podcast Movement last summer, and we were talking about that very question. Wouldn't it be great to actually get your transcript back as a podcaster? At the lowest level, just have access to it so you can share it out as you want or control its dissemination. But even at a higher level in the future, being able to edit that transcript and correct it so that you're actually saving money because Google's doing maybe most of the legwork for you, but also having the accuracy that you might get with human-created transcription that takes a long time.
Right.
So... going back to a question, can they flush the cache, do a refresh? Because what podcasters are going to do, this is the ticket I'm going to get. Blueberry, my podcast is not updated on Google, even though we're doing WeSubPub, we're doing all these things to, try to hit you to let you know that there's a new episode out. But they're still going to email them and they're saying, my update. And when Apple does that, I can say, go over to Apple and refresh or purge or what. And actually, Apple does not recommend people do that a lot, but people still do. They go over there and they purge. Is there a way to trigger a refresh? Because podcasters are very impatient. And when their episode number 402 is out and they're waiting 3 hours, and even though people are subscribed and seeing it in the app right away, they go and look and search and they say, oh, if only 402 is found, and oh my God. And they freak out and they send me an email and say, I hate you, fix this. So,
Todd, are you talking about the episode refresh, or are you talking about series level metadata refresh?
I'm talking.
Are you doing both?
Everything. New album art, refresh the episode. How is that handled, or is it, or planned?
So within our system, the most common action for a podcast is to release a new episode, and that's the one that happens the fastest, usually. But we do have internal guarantees about trying to make sure that all the other refreshes happen too, such as a metadata update, like you said. As you just mentioned, that's not going to stop people from thinking that it should happen faster in certain cases, or from maybe having a really good reason that it should have happened faster. And so I don't think we offer anything like this right now, but being able to trigger a reindex, or maybe when someone goes to Podcast Manager, they can say, I have a new episode that's not showing yet. It is an interesting idea. There's nothing in the product like that today, but it's something that I feel like we would think about adding to the list of things we want to get done.
But isn't it just I'm just going to talk from a hosting provider standpoint. We implemented WeSubPub so that we could, that basically we almost see an instant update on Google when we do that. So is that a primary good trigger for you guys?
Yeah, my understanding is that would lead things to be near instant. Sometimes even when things are near instant, once in a while they're not.
Right.
And it's nice to have the ability to sort of pull to refresh. And so I'm just saying that it's possible that in addition to the near instant experience that's provided almost every single time, it could be nice to have sort of an escape, a pressure release valve for folks who, want to refresh it themselves.
So I don't necessarily, for those of you that are hosting competitors, if you want to help your podcasters out, I shouldn't tell you this, but you've already heard it. You need to have that WeSubPub done now, yesterday.
So does your
SubPub,
yeah, WeSubPub hub, yeah.
Does your system learn based on the cadence of the history of the publishing to prioritize your scanning of new items?
Yeah. So popularity would be an example of a signal that gets taken into account. If the most popular podcasts will be, or the ones that come out more frequently, it would make sense to update those more often.
So
go ahead.
So if I publish it 9 p.m. Monday and Thursday night, do you guys learn that I publish it Monday and Thursday at 9 p.m.?
I don't think that specific signal is incorporated, but it would make sense to incorporate something like that to know when to look for updates based on history. Right now, for new episodes, we don't get a lot of complaints about the speed of refresh. And so the area that we're focused a bit more on right now, just looking at the next 3 to 6 months, is when a new feed comes out. Robin, you said earlier that, we try to guarantee that it'll be live within a week. We think it's oftentimes more like a couple days. But personally, our opinion is that it should be ready like right then or that same day when you publish a new feed. So if I had to say like where our attention is right now, I would say that it's on when a new feed comes out. But I would love to have the problem 3 months from now where no one actually thinks that that's bad anymore. And so we can really focus on being smarter about when new episodes come out.
So just for clarity also, is there a feed size limit you guys are looking at? Or do you even care?
I think it would be a great problem to have if people are making so many episodes that we have to think about the feed size limit.
See.
Well, yeah.
Well, there's two sides to that, but you're doing the caching, so that's gonna help a lot. I would just ask Robin, when you guys go back and talk to the technical team, if the guy has 1,000 episodes in his feed, please only take the last 5 to do the pagination to update your cache. If you can do that, if you load that full 1,000 episodes every time you hit that feed, I'm gonna get killed by tech support.
I'm not sure, no offense, Todd, but do you offer the ability to do a partial request on an RSS feed?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't even say I'm not a techie.
Yeah,
I'm just the
Todd,
guy.
Todd, do you have the ability to limit the amount? I mean, the content creator can limit the amount of episodes that are available.
Yeah,
in
we've
the
set
RSS
it.
feed.
We've set it to $2.99 or whatever the Apple number is. Yeah.
I think just like looking at images and videos and some of the things that people are serving up these days, I would not be worried about an RSS feed. It's like a pretty compressed way of.
But now that the word is on the street that you guys will list all 1,000 episodes, that'll end up being my number one ticket for the next 6 months.
Okay. I'm sorry about that, but I'm not quite as sorry as
Todd, you have to be a podcaster for like 10 years to hit that level, right?
Well, there's a lot of them. The Daily Show. Look at. But still, when that feed gets to a certain size, what we've done is, I don't need to talk about it, but we've actually compressed the amount of data beyond like the first 20 and we don't have the full meta stack for people that want to keep the size of that file down. But anyway, it's not here nor there.
Is there any limit that you guys have on the size of cover art graphics? in any kind of preferred format? I mean, obviously, probably JPEG and PNG, but are you guys trying to limit the size of artwork at all?
I mean, the name of our company is Google.
So you don't care. Okay.
I guess maybe there is. We've never encountered anyone running up against it. The only thing that I've encountered that I counsel people on is make the cover art square. Right. Because otherwise it can get, we do like an aspect fill is usually the way that we'll resize it. And if it's not square, then it might not appear quite as you intend.
So we have lots of people listening to this show from the other side of the fence over at that company in Cupertino. Do you guys really have any comments or feedback to them while you're on the show? I'm stirring the pot here. Just tell me no.
Boy, you are stirring the pot, Sean. Come on.
You're definitely stirring the pot. I mean, I know a lot of the folks, Steve Wilson and Lauren and that whole team, and we are all at a bunch of the conferences when we're able to be there in person. And totally. I think that the relationship that we have is really productive. In terms of how Apple have been pioneers in the podcasting industry, just some of the progress that they've helped spearhead. And I think one thing that we're really thankful for is that allowed us and forced us to approach the problem through the lens of how can Google be really helpful?
Yep.
And so Android is an example of how we felt Google could be really helpful. Integration with search and assistant are areas where we thought Google could be really helpful. And I think that focus is owed in part to the groundwork that was laid by Apple and some of the other old school podcasters, including yourself, and that you continue to do, that Apple continues to do to this day. So I guess our overwhelming feeling is one of gratitude to Apple and also all the other people and companies that kind of got involved even before we did.
Zach, maybe that's a good segue here because, you guys did a great job getting the Google Podcast app out. And I think this will come as no surprise to you. Many of us will wish that, and I know it's a whole big deal to get a podcast app as default loaded as OEM build. Can you say anything about that? Will we ever potentially see the podcast app as part of the OEM build for Android?
What I would say is that it's not as simple as it might be on iPhone, for example. So, when you get an iPhone, all the different iPhones come with the same apps. Whereas if you get an Android phone, it's a competitive and diverse ecosystem of manufacturers. And so you might get different apps on your Samsung, from your Motorola, from your LG, from your Sony, from your Pixel phone. And so in each case, we're trying to make the Google Podcast product as good an app as possible. And we've had a lot of interest from manufacturers in terms of pre-installing the icon. And then also the experience itself is built into Assistant and Search. And so it's something that we've always thought of as part of Search. And so we make that experience available for all 2 billion plus Android users around the world. And, as a result of manufacturers thinking that it's a good experience to preload, we've had a lot of interest, but it's not going to be something where it goes from 0% to 100% on a given day. It's going to be this year, maybe 1% of new Android phones, maybe next year it's 3%, maybe the year after it's 5%, or maybe numbers much bigger than that. But it's not something that we can say because there's a diverse ecosystem out there, and so we're just one player in it.
And I understand that, and I understand the complexities of the licensing agreements and the preloading and all that. So, we don't have to get to that in this show. You've alluded to it already, but can podcasters and podcast listeners help that process by asking their phone manufacturer, please include this on a preload? Does those types of activities help, or is it more annoyance with the phone manufacturers? Or will they even listen?
I think everything helps when it comes to being enthusiastic. One thing that podcasters have been really receptive of is having the Google Podcast badge on their website, sharing the link to Google Podcasts, letting users see that it's a one-click from being able to listen to the podcast, subscribe to that show on any Android device in a native experience with all the features that you've come to expect. So that's been the most powerful thing for us, has just been seeing how podcasters and also hosting companies like Libsyn and Blueberry have rallied around including Google Podcast as an option for people who want to listen. And if you happen to work at a phone manufacturer or want to put in a good word, that's fine. That's not something that I've advocated or seen tried before. But if whatever your creativity, what makes you want to do.
So being that you guys are, and I know we want to demo the app, but being that you guys are doing a transcript now, and there's potential good things coming from that in the future, and I know that at least the last time I talked to you, that the hope would be that sometimes we're going to be able to talk about the Google Podcast Manager. We're talking about Google Podcast Manager in this show. Someone's going to go on google.com and search for Google Podcast Manager and potentially find a segment in this show as part of a search result. Can you talk about where that is in the ecosphere of development, or what podcasters can expect?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that particular journey that you just described is very inspiring to us.
Oh,
and I think we've seen it be inspiring across the industry as well. I wouldn't say to expect anything like right now. There's not a timeline that I can share, but it's definitely something that we see ourselves sort of rowing toward. And so a lot of these intermediate steps, improving search quality, getting topical podcast searches out the door, which we launched last summer, so that you can search for, let's say, podcasts about Kevin Durant, see a podcast that's about Kevin Durant. That feature is something that takes us one step further to what you described. And so I think, the more we see engagement with that, the more we feel like we've reached each milestone of quality, the closer we get to being able to do what you just said, where you're actually finding a specific point in the podcast. But the one thing I would just caveat there is that because podcasts are often produced with the narrative in mind, starting from the beginning, it's something where for that particular thing of jumping to the segment where we talk about something, it would probably be something where we want publishers to actually say, yes, it's cool if you do this with my podcast. And so once again, it's the reason why I'm excited that we have Podcast Manager and that relationship with creators for the first time, so that we can make it as easy as possible for creators to control how their podcast is distributed.
So they could actually go in and set those segments in the tools that you guys provide too, right? That could be done by the content creator.
Exactly.
Robin, I wanted to just make sure if there's any other functions in the Google Podcast Manager that we haven't talked about yet that you wanted to put out there.
Yeah, a couple of really important basic functions that I think are important, like the user management, like that you can add collaborators. You can also add different roles of permissions, like viewers. So there's the icon. You go up a bit slightly with that person icon. Yeah. So you can add different viewers. You can add editors, admins. That's pretty useful. We saw that as a very a demanded, a heavily requested feature from our early access program.
Beautiful.
Another thing is the feed. So if you click the RSS icon, you can actually see the feed that's being set by Google. And this is useful because you might have loads of feeds, or maybe the feed that you wanted, that you initially claimed has now changed, right? You've changed hosting providers potentially, and you want to add the feed to this show. So you can see potentially you might have a list of feeds, and Google can show you the ones which is served. And the other feature that you actually was sharing beforehand, the hamburger 3-dot menu, you can actually download this as a CSV. And I know that's a pretty useful feature especially when there's tons of different dashboards out there for your analytics, and Google Podcast Manager is one of them. That I think the other thing I just want to call out is we've been to build Podcast Manager. We worked with a bunch of different podcasters, hosting providers out there, give us lots of feedback. So I want to call out a bunch of folks, and actually, I don't think we would be in a good a state as we are without the help and the feedback that the ecosystem has given us. So thank you very much.
Can you talk about really quick why we've heard that there's over 2 million podcast feeds in Google Podcasts, but the other largest directory just has a little over 1 million? Do you guys have a sense on what's going on there?
Yeah, Zach, do you want to take that?
Sure, yeah, we have some sense. I think the internet is a really big place, and there are a lot of reasons around the world why someone might publish a podcast, but not necessarily distribute it to every directory.
Right.
So it could be as simple as, the local radio station that publishes a podcast, but doesn't necessarily care that much about its distribution beyond what it's able to reach terrestrially. And so that's something that we might find on the web, but wouldn't necessarily be submitted to some of the other directories. And then I think internationally as well, there are a lot of examples. There are probably some also that would qualify as not as active anymore. And so I usually take this stat with a grain of salt in terms of whether it's 1 million or 2 million. It's really about, is the stuff you're looking for there? And so in most cases, I think folks who want it to be distributed broadly are able to do that. And then there are some cases where I found content, like the local radio example on Google Podcasts that hasn't necessarily been available elsewhere.
Is it possible that part of the duplication could be a feed that's HTTPS versus HTTP, or have you guys kind of winnowed that out?
No, there are a lot more than 2 million feeds out there.
Okay.
But
right.
After we deduplicate, which would definitely include, merging HTTP and HTTPS, there's actually a lot more duplication than just the URL scheme.
Right.
But after we've done that, it comes out to still being above 2 million.
Okay, gotcha.
Interesting. Oh my goodness!
So we want to move on and talk about the iOS app.
I think there's
Zach?
like 50 more questions I could ask on this, but we definitely want to give Zach time to show us what what they've got going on here, what's new.
Oh, and before we start on that, Zach, I mean, if we could talk a little bit before you show this, is there a delta in technology between the Android version of this and the iOS version? Are both native now, or is one a little different than the other? And that might be a clue in the direction that you guys are going with the apps.
So the Android app is still built into Google Search, Google Assistant.
Right.
But it's a native technology. It uses all the native features to download, store offline, do push notifications, all those things that you could imagine. And on iOS, it's the same. It's a native app. There, in terms of the feature list, it's nearly identical, and it's as close as we can get to identical. Once in a while, you have something where something is easier on one platform for some reason, and it might make it out a few weeks earlier. To give you one example, we've supported Android Auto on Android for a while now, and our iOS launch doesn't have CarPlay, but our next release will have CarPlay. So very soon in the next few weeks, we'll be releasing Google Podcasts for iOS with CarPlay. And so that's an example where there's a lag of a couple weeks here or there, but all in all, they have feature parity.
I had a bunch of my devs ask me, did you guys do the iOS app, or did you do the base in Flutter, or what? How did you guys? Can you reveal that on how you did the base code?
I wish we could have done the base in Flutter. It's really cool to have those cross-platform frameworks, and I use them a lot in my personal projects, like when I'm just messing around, because it saves a lot of time. When you want to integrate something with Google Search, Google Assistant, and to the level of depth that we have, and to the benefit that we've been able to provide for users as a result, it's very hard because the Flutter team isn't necessarily thinking about that specific use case,
right.
Nor should they be. So for us, stuff tends to be a bit more custom, but then on the iOS side, there are lots of Google-wide framework that we're taking advantage of. So we try to use stuff off the shelf inside Google when we can, And then oftentimes we aren't able to because of the specific needs of our team.
Right. I was begged to ask that nerdy question, so thanks for indulging me.
I appreciate the nerdy question.
Do we want to switch to have Zach show off? Yeah.
What I'll do is I'll join the call from my iPhone, and then I'll broadcast my screen to the meeting, and hopefully that will just work. Maybe if you can pin it up for folks to see. Does that work?
Yeah, we'll see how it goes here.
Yeah, I could do it here too. So, all
right, we're going to leave you singles. What happened?
Zach, I think we lost you.
Yeah, he was switching to screen mode, so here it comes. So he's sharing screen. Yeah, so
I don't think that we can hear him though. That's the thing.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yep.
Okay. I think my audio is coming through the phone now.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
And you see my screen.
I can see it's definitely doesn't show the app, but it looks like I'm seeing your screen. Oh, there we go. Yep, we're good.
Okay. I think we should just go with this.
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what's showing and what's not, but should we go forward with the demo? You can see the screen and hear my voice?
Sure.
Yeah. It's all good.
Okay, great. So I'll launch Google Podcasts, and here you can see the experience of a completely new user, or almost completely new. This is my friends at Couscous, and Couscous has generally allowed me to use her account for this demo. If you don't have any subscriptions, what you'll see is a prompt to go over to what we call the Explore tab. And so I'll go tap in there. And here you can see personalized recommendations. Now, as you use the app, the recommendations will become more personalized to your listening history. But at first, it's personalized primarily toward your Google interests. So I can see here some podcasts to stay informed about the global COVID-19 pandemic, as well as personalized episode recommendations for Couscous and other shows as well. Let's say that I go in and I check out this show and it looks good, and so I subscribe. I can turn on auto download notifications, new episode notifications, etc. And then maybe I'll also subscribe to Life Kit, which I can do via that shortcut. Then if I go back to the home page, what I'll see is that my feed is starting to fill out. And so I'm getting episodes from the podcast that I've subscribed to. I might want to queue a couple up, and then I'll go see them over at the end of my queue down here at the bottom. So now I'm going to show you, that's like kind of the experience for a new user, which I think a lot of listeners might be. But over time, we want the app to improve as you continue to use it. And so we kind of view it through these lenses of when you first start using it, and then when you get a little bit more experience. So I'm going to go ahead and change into my account that I use for work. And here what you can see is I have a ton of subscriptions here. I also have episodes from a much more varied array of different shows. I'm going to go ahead and turn on, I meant to do this earlier, but since I'm a power user now, we'll sort of segment it visually with dark mode. And if you go over to activity, I can see that I have a queue of episodes that I'd like to listen to, downloads, some of which are auto-downloaded when new stuff comes out. We also launched Listen History across Android and iOS. You can see I was listening to the feed from Libsyn, and then my subscriptions. If I want to go ahead and find a new episode, what you can see now is that the podcasts are personalized toward a profile that has a much deeper listening history. And I can even go ahead and search, let's do new media show. And then I can subscribe.
So are you guys doing any cross referencing with a user's search history at all around keywords at all? Or is it purely listening?
In the case of Couscous, the first user that we tested with, there wasn't a listening history, or it was very light. And so the interests across Google and web activity would help inform some of those recommendations.
Okay. That's cool.
I think that's all. Oh, one final thing to show you guys. So there are a lot of different categories that you can go to see recommendations that are a little more specific. And then finally, if I go into settings, if you just, for whatever reason, don't want personalized recommendations, you can turn that off. And then what I'll see is kind of just recommendations that are not personalized to me. I personally do like having them to be personalized. So then you can see it's back to the personalized recommendations here. Just for people who haven't seen the app at all yet, this is kind of the full screen player view where I have insight into my queue. I can reorder stuff here, as well as set a sleep timer or change the playback speed. Some people like to listen a little bit faster. I can also turn on trim silence. So, I think people who have been following the app has seen kind of this march of progress when it comes to adding some of these features over time. And so some of these, for example, the queue, are actually new within the last month. So that's kind of like a basic outline of the app. The launch itself, I'll probably exit present mode now, and then maybe talk about a little bit of the launch itself. Or did you have any questions on the app before I do that?
I don't think I've got any. Did you have?
Yeah, I have one. Is there any kind of human edited editorial areas in the app where you guys select, or some team at Google selects what's featured and promoted, like on the kind of listing area or the directory area? Is there anything like that, or is it all algorithmic based on personalization?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Up until about a month ago, all algorithmic, and we've always been open to the idea of doing some curation. We think there are a lot of examples where it can help. For example, if a new podcast comes out where there might not be that many signals yet, or if there's a particular big moment for a podcast. But we wanted to make sure that we could do it in a way that we felt was helpful, not just developed podcasting markets, but actually scaled around the world. Because a lot of the emerging podcasting markets, like India or Brazil actually, maybe I wouldn't even call it emerging anymore. You want to make sure that you're providing a great experience to all the folks that are coming online and listening to podcasts for the first time. And so I think we're finally in a place as an organization where we can start to think about it from that perspective, and also use the learnings to feed back into our automated and scaled systems. And so the first example of that is actually this Stay Informed About COVID-19 carousel, as well as the Staying Mindful carousel, which we've basically put, for the past couple weeks at the top of the For You tab. But over time, depending on how many times people see it or how they interact with it, that would also potentially be replaced by algorithmic recommendations, or continue to stay at the top if it's useful for people. And the content of these carousels does update on a regular basis. I'm not sure if it's daily or weekly, with a lot of overlap, but some new content being incorporated as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. So does your directory categorization, does it vary from others in the podcasting space? Did you guys create your own categorization?
So for now, I think these are pretty standard.
Okay.
And use the same tags that you might see elsewhere.
Yes.
But you can imagine over time, as we understand what podcasts are about from a topical perspective, having the ability to actually become a little bit more fine-grained and a little bit more personalized with these category names.
Please let us know in advance if you decide to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and are you guys looking at any kind of new namespace stuff at all coming in the RSS?
I think he alluded to it, but didn't say it, Rob.
Did he? Oh, okay. Got
it. There's nothing to announce. I think you could interpret my statement in two ways. One would be what you described as like RSS, and another would be in terms of understanding the topic of different podcasts. So, for example, if I go into this episode of Breakfast Club, you can see that there are certain topics that you can search on Google here. So, for example, this is about, it looks like Michael Jordan's children. And so maybe I'm like curious to see a bit more, and it's very easy here to actually go into a Google for a particular topic that appeared in a podcast. And so if I had a strong interest in Jeffrey Jordan, it's possible you could imagine actually being recommended podcasts relevant to that specific topic from here.
Okay.
Awesome.
Do you also foresee, like hosts and guests listings as well as part of a podcast?
I think that's a really good idea. It's something that, as we think about editorial curation as well, we want to also give voice to publishers, publishing network, and potentially make it easier for someone like Vox to have some control over the presence in the app. And so, for example, if you have a particular interest in a person, that's similar to the demo that I just did with Jeffrey Jordan. That would be a great example of something that we could use too.
Right. Yeah. Well, Todd, do you have any more questions for him? I mean, is there anything else, Zach, that you wanted to cover in the app that maybe we haven't covered yet?
No, I think that's good. If people have further questions, they can follow up with you or reach out to us. I know we have. I'm available on like Twitter, and we get a lot of product suggestions through that. I think maybe we'll rejoin from video and talk a little bit about the motivation behind launching the iOS app, doing the redesign on Android. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll Skype here.
Oops, we lost him.
Yeah, he'll be back. We lost Robin complete.
Oh, yeah.
Robin's back.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Both of you guys are back.
Did that work out?
It did.
Yeah.
I think it was kind of, I've not used that function of Skype before, so we got lucky and worked our way through it. Robin, don't forget to send me, if you can, that link to how to give you some feedback, because I got some guys chomping in the bit in chat room. So it's just a few things. There was one question, Zach, before we get into the strategy. Our podcasters, should they still run the feed in the header? Now that's how you guys are primarily detecting a show, is through some metadata that we put in the header for the feed. Is that still should we still continue to do that?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great signal, so that we understand the website that the podcast is associated with. And you can probably imagine Google is able to understand pretty well websites and the way they link to each other. And so having that information connected to a podcast through the bidirectional link is still super helpful.
The challenge that we probably running into is when, again, going back to people having 2 or 3 shows on one website, if we can work with you guys to make you understand that maybe a category page will have a different header or meta tag than the primary site. We'll talk about that via email. So
Exactly.
Yeah, and then also
we do
one last
recommend having specific pages for each podcast.
Yeah, and then one question too is, if a podcaster wants to update their RSS feed or substitute out like a new one, so let's say they change host. Now, granted, they could always do a 301 redirect, but is there anything that you guys are thinking about being able to physically cut and paste to replace?
I don't think anything in mind that would add to that question.
Okay.
all right, cool. Let's go ahead and talk about your strategy.
Yeah, so maybe some people have heard already, but for folks who aren't aware, we launched Google Podcasts as an Android app for the first time in the summer of 2018, and have improved that app over the past couple of years, past year and a half about, just by adding features like some of the ones that I mentioned, sleep timer, trim silence, web player, all these things. And one thing that we noticed throughout was that most of the folks who were having a great experience in the app were actually people who were pretty familiar with podcasts. But most of the users of the app more generally were subscribing still to 5 or fewer podcasts. And we wanted to make it as easy as possible to discover new content, and also to fulfill our vision of introducing people around the world to podcasting and make it as friendly as possible for someone who's just getting started, trying to bridge that gap of where you start when you don't know what to listen to, and getting to a point where you have 10, 20 subscriptions, or in my case, as you all just saw, 100, or not hundreds, but over 100. And so making that as easy as possible, we wanted to redesign it around discovery and give ourselves a lot of surfaces in the app for users to discover new content. And so we started with that, and with having a tab dedicated for podcast discovery and exploration, and also bringing episodes to be a little bit more front and center, so that folks who are not as familiar with diving right into a show that they already know can actually see the content up front. And so that timing of the redesign also coincided with the timing of being able to build out an iOS app, which is something that you might not expect from us. And honestly, if it were just an iOS app, it probably wouldn't have been a priority for us. The reason that it's a priority for us is because one of our product pillars is to be available everywhere. And so if you have a Google Home but an iPhone, we don't want to make it so that you have to listen to a different thing on your Google Home than you do on your iPhone. We want to provide an experience where your progress is synced everywhere. And so we ended up being able to prioritize the experience on iPhone, but just kind of leapfrogging straight to the second version of the app that we launched in March. And so that's kind of why you saw a lot of features come out at once, whereas usually we have a bit more of an incremental approach, a bit more open in terms of our software development process. But because we were getting a lot of things out the door at the same time, it saved time to actually just skip forward to the design that we'd been thinking about for a while.
I was excited when you guys introduced the iOS app. I really was. I was excited to see that happen, and kind of laughed a little bit internally because I thought, okay, Apple, you're up next. So it was, but I think we're here to help move the process along, more options for everybody. But I think that I was really, really excited to see it, and I think that it just shows that you guys are really putting the pedal to the metal when it comes to, I've said for a long time here that you guys are moving steadily forward, and that you've got a plan, and that the 800-pound gorilla, which is Google.com, is in some people's best friend. And I'll be honest with you, I can't be more happy personally.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. I think hosting providers and also podcasters was another reason that the iOS app is important. We don't want folks making a podcast to have to think about, if you're on this device, go here. If you're on that device, go there. So we found that when it comes to folks trying it out who have iPhones and also make podcasts, and also linking to their podcast on various platforms, it's nice that they don't have to write logic that says, only on these platforms do you want to go listen on Google Podcasts. Right. So being universal is definitely one of our goals.
I covered most of the questions that were on Facebook. I got a couple that are on YouTube Live. Someone asked, and again, this goes back to something we talked about earlier in the conversation. They said, "Hey Todd, will you ask if Google will be bringing a content ID process into their podcasting platform, or other content standards like the WHO authoritative sources restrictions?" That may be a bigger question than you guys can answer.
I don't even know how to address that question.
So sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Go. I mean, if you want to continue on that, Todd, go ahead.
That was the question that was asked in chat.
I'm not even sure. I don't understand it.
Yeah, basically, I think I don't know that much about content ID process. So again, I don't. Zach, do you guys have any answer to that?
Yeah,
could be like watermarking or anything like that. Is that kind of what it's referring to?
So Content ID is a system that is used on services like YouTube that helps understand when there might be copyright infringement.
Right.
And that's something that I think benefits from YouTube actually hosting content. And so we don't have anything to announce at this time when it comes to Content ID on Google Podcasts or for anything in search. And I wouldn't be the expert on it. So it's something that you'd have to follow up on separately, but it's a good question in terms of like copyright. We do have articles on the Help Center and how to issue a takedown request if you notice that there is copyright infringement across search, including Google Podcasts. And so, our policy and our approach right now is consistent with the rest of search, and that's we don't have plans to change that.
Yeah, and Rob, that goes back to even us when it comes to takedown requests and stuff like that. Some of that flows through.
Right.
So go ahead.
So search is another area. Has there been anything new that's been done in the search aspect on the podcast experience?
A lot. Most of the stuff is ranking improvement. So if you search for a podcast, you'll sort of it'll start to feel more like what you've come to expect over the past 22 years from Google, of just kind of feeling like it knows exactly what you're looking for. And so to give you one example, we have a launch rolling out this month that helps use the opinion of the web to understand when you're doing a categorical search. So a good example of a query would be if you did top road trip podcast. That's a search that in the past would be very likely to show you podcasts that have the word road trip in them, and now might show you podcasts that are actually good for a road trip. And I think the body of information that Google has in terms of what's available around the web and what people are actually blogging about and compiling lists about is one input to that algorithm that's super helpful.
Oh, look at there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I would expect this query to work a lot better a month or two from now.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So I think like once in a while we have something that feels big enough that we'll message it, but hopefully it'll be something that people actually proactively notice, just kind of like feels better and better. And the one thing I will say is that the improvements that you see on search is the same system that we use in the app. So you'll see the improvements there as well. And, since Google Podcasts is part of search, we benefit from being able to have those improvements show everywhere.
Something I say to podcasters all the time is that I record for my audience, but I write my show notes for Google. We're going to go beyond that at some point, where right now Google's main emphasis is looking at the page authority, all that stuff that goes into SEO and all the stupid black hat stuff people try to do. But really, at some point here, you're going to be able to take the content, the raw content, and be able to set some sort of authority to that as well. That to me is very, very exciting. And being
it's all about context, right? It's all about context,
it's a context,
topics, themes, subjects. All things are important too. But is there any? How far away are you guys away from really driving that point home?
It's hard to say, and I think it depends on exactly your context. If you rewind 20 years, there were probably countless situations where Google, even as the number one search engine, still wasn't really meeting your needs. And now those examples, certainly when you're searching on Google for articles or people or some of the other things that are very commonly searched for, it feels like those situations where it fails to meet the need are very few and far between. And what we're focused on is really setting up our team to be able to make progress the same way Google as a whole has over the past couple decades. So our investment that we have right now is in metrics across the app and across search in order to better understand what's working and what's not, and make it easy for, let's say, a single engineer to jump in, make a change, see if it works, and then go from there. The change that we just looked at when it comes to road tripping podcasts was a great example of that. It was a team of a couple engineers from a sister team to ours in search was like, we have this technology. We just used it to actually improve queries for universities. Like if you did a search for top colleges, and we think it could apply to podcasts. And it was very promising and ended up leading to a lot of wins in the experiment that we ran. And so we decided to launch it. So getting podcasts to feel like, on equal footing with all the different other things that people search for can really be an accelerant for us in Google, because as you can imagine, the organization is set up to build good search products.
And going to that, Rob, a year ago, I was, like on my knees praying that Google would add an audio tab to the Google search results, and
just
now,
may not be needed.
It's not needed. It's great. It's videos there, news, shopping, images. I don't think we'll ever get a place on the Google tab as audio only. Yeah, I can still hope, but I don't think at this point, based upon mobile utilization and doing searches on mobile and because when I'm on my mobile phone, if I need to search for an image, I just say image in the search and it shows me the images. So I think that we got that wanting that audio tab on the Google search results is it was a good wish, but based on what they've done so far, discovery is increasing for those that are searching for content.
Well, that audio tab at the top used to be on Google like 10 or 15 years ago, or I'm not sure how far back, but it was there and it got pulled down. Guys, I wanted to ask you about two kind of lingering areas in your platform, and one is Google Music podcasts, and then also FeedBurner. If you guys wanted to talk about those two topics at all, if you can. So,
Robin, you want to talk about FeedBurner, and then I'll talk about Google Play Music?
Yeah. So should I can go first on FeedBurner. So FeedBurner is a super interesting product that podcasters, publishers, and bloggers use. I've been looking at the podcasting use case, and we ran a research study on and spoke to a bunch of podcasters about it. We're still investigating, and we're still in the process where we're thinking about, okay, what should we do next with FeedBurner? If you have any feedback or comments or thoughts around FeedBurner, please let me know. And I'm happy to take them and take them to the team. But it's, for us, I think it's actually a pretty interesting product, because it's very much based on of course, like the RSS feed world, and it's pretty, what we've seen is still pretty integral for podcasters, for some podcasters. And it's something that, like, as we've built Podcast Manager, we're trying to think about how we can provide value to the ecosystem, and maybe in something's there in FeedBurner, but we're looking into it.
So, Robin, I just have to plug podcastsmear.com. Definitely check it out. We own it. It's full disclosure. It's a FeedBurner replacement. Happy to sell it to Google. No, hey, you just got to do what you got to do, right? Got the man on the line. But we did. Someone from the Google group had come into podcast movements page and asked a question about FeedBurner, and the response almost wholeheartedly was kill it. So,
Todd, there'd be millions of people impacted by that.
Well,
I'm sure,
no, I guess I understand, but all jokingly aside, FeedBurner was a big craw in a lot of our sites for a long time because it was slow. It wasn't updating. It was my number one tech support ticket thing for probably 5 years straight. And then enough people moved off it. It didn't become that issue anymore. So I'd love to talk to you about FeedBurner if you ever decide to invest some time in it. But it can be its own ugly animal to a certain extent. But we can talk offline about it sometime.
I mean, it doesn't have to be if it's worked on and improved. I think.
Sorry, Rob. I missed that.
He said it. Go ahead, Rob. Say what because you stepped.
I just think that the FeedBurner can certainly be improved and updated and things like that, and it probably won't have a lot of those issues.
Yeah. Right? So someone in the chat said, "Kill it or update it." Either one.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think that's fair. We've noticed that lots of people still use it. Which is incredible, given that I don't think there's been much active work on it for quite a while.
10 years plus.
So, like the fact that it's still being actively used means something, and we want to make sure that it becomes valuable, and like as you mentioned, like at this state is it's troubling that there are we want to see whether we can make a decision on what to do with it soon.
Rob, we've held these guys way over time. So
no, I know we have.
What was your last question, Rob? That you?
Oh, yeah, it was to Zach about the Google Play Music podcast platform.
Yeah, probably a good question to conclude on. It's been awesome, Rob and Todd, joining you for this today, and hearing also from you, Robin, about Podcast Manager. The short answer is that there's nothing new to announce today when it comes to Google Play Music podcast and Google Podcast. So I mean, we've talked before about the investments that we're making in Google Podcasts, but we don't have anything to tell you right now when it comes to like the future of the two products.
Okay.
I think you probably know our request, just remove podcasts from Google Play Music. So I think they pretty much are to a certain extent already, but.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to get back to you on that, but thanks for the request.
Well, you know what it is you guys already know. It's kind of, you guys have invested a huge amount of time and resources in building something beautiful and 100%
just focus
functional
on that.
And we don't, what I'll just tell you what we're going to do at Blueberry. We're going to remove the link to Google Play Music. It's not going to be as a destination anymore. So, matter of fact, I think it's already gone. We just want people to use Google Podcasts from a podcast standpoint. This is where you guys have invested the money. This is where we're going to, help podcasters make a decision on, distribution point.
I think one thing that I would just say in all seriousness is that, it doesn't always appear this way from the outside, but internally for the past, probably even more than the past 4 years, we've had very active relationship with Google Play Music. There are folks who rely on that to listen to podcasts. And so we've tried to take a user-centric approach and do what's best for users. And there have been times where that's confusing on the publisher side, on the hosting provider side. And so we understand that. And what I can say is that we're working very closely with not only the Google Play Music team, also YouTube Music teams. And we have active conversations, and we try to balance the needs of users who are relying on a given product with publishers, hosting providers, all those different constituents. And so that's something that I think we've made a lot of progress on in the last 6 months or so. And so, I'm at least happy to report that, your feedback, makes it into those discussions that we have, and everyone's kind of aware of the different sentiments from the different folks out there. So, I think in the end, that communication is definitely going to be good for us as a company and for the individual products involved in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on it is that the more places where we can have listening happen, I think is the point. And there's certainly nothing wrong with having podcasts in the Google Play Music platform. I think what the issue is on the content creator side of publishing, where do those shows get submitted, right? Is it into Google Podcasts? If the audio is available in Google Play Music Podcasts, that's great. That's just another place to listen. It's where the content creators have that relationship. I think it's far more important in this discussion.
And if you bridge that, then good, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, fellas. Hey, I know we've kept you 30 minutes longer.
Yes.
I definitely appreciate and apologize for going on time. I know your time is very valuable, but
thank you so much, guys.
Thank you both for coming on. We definitely appreciate it. And this is going to this will be a blowout listening from the audience standpoint. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Todd. Thanks, Rob. Always a pleasure.
All right, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. And come on anytime.
Anytime, yeah.
All right.
Take care.
We'll be back.
Okay. All right.
Oh. I'm going to have to go back and listen to this episode again myself. A lot of nuggets there.
We covered a lot of ground.
Yes, we did.
Question about it.
Yes, we did. So what did everyone think of that? What's that? What's the comments in the Facebook? We got people on Facebook. We got people on YouTube. Everyone's watching today.
Well, I said a couple of weeks ago that this was going to be a big announcement, and I think it turned out to be pretty good size
too. And a lot going on there. But Rob, we need to promote. I kind of looked at that number for our show, and I was like, whoa, we don't have many people listening on Google Podcasts. Then I go to the stats. I'm like, yeah, they're on Overcast, they're on Pocket Cast, they're, so them being late to the party.
Right. Though I think I heard somebody say online, I can't recall where, and maybe I shouldn't say it, but I heard that the Google Podcast is now considered the number one listening platform on Android now for podcasts.
No, don't know about that.
Don't know about that yet. I thought I heard that somewhere.
Of course, we just got the updated, we'll see how it does on iOS. We have to start looking. I guess I need to dig in deeper, but I don't think so.
You don't think so yet?
No, I don't think so.
It should get there soon.
It should get there very fast. And I do like Zach's answer on the OEM situation where that's the key. That's the holy grail to get the Google Podcast app as a preloaded, the icon on the phone. People they get their phones, they add some apps, but if it's on there already, what is this?
Well, Todd, you have to realize that there is a possibility that these OEMs may be building their own podcast listening platforms.
Well, that's cool too, but they're a day late and $1 short. You could just load the Google Podcast one and be done with it, but time will tell.
Mm-hmm. Don't be surprised if you don't start seeing that happen.
Well, if it does, that's great, because we're going to have then a preloaded app is better than no preloaded app at all.
Right. But as long as it's got a good listening experience and the OEM has done a good job of marketing it, making it available. If it's a default app on their Android experience, then
And I apologize.
Maybe that's a good thing.
And apologize, I didn't get to all the questions. I know there's a bunch of questions on YouTube, so all over the place for those of you that were asking questions. So, but man, oh man, what a show! Holy crap!
Yeah.
So got a connection to be able to send them kind of our the little things we found already, and we'll know pretty quick how effective this is, because the listeners, the podcasters don't contact Google, they're going to contact us. But there is, for those of you listening, there is a very cool function on that submission process. You can actually say, hey, this is the wrong feed for my show. You can tell them when you're claiming your show, you look at that, make sure that they're pulling the right feed. Because if they're using a different feed, they're going to tell you. And here's the problem for some of you, some of you are going to run into challenges, especially those of you that are on Anchor. If you don't have your email address, you're not going to be able to claim your show. Anchor will have to claim your show for you.
Right.
So,
yeah, you better. There's a lot of platforms, hosting platforms that'll put a default email address into your RSS feed,
and it's not yours.
So you need to get in and put an active email address in there. Yeah. I mean, even if it takes going in creating like a new Yahoo account or something, but you need to check that account on a regular basis.
Gmail gives the email accounts away every day, but don't just use a real account. I've been using geeknews@gmail.com for years. I don't get spam because of that in my feed, but it's got to be an email.
I don't get spam from that either.
It's got to be an email address you check every day. It's and some of you don't check email every day. It's got to be an email address you check every day.
Well, and this is important for more and more platforms because it's important for Spotify. It's important now for Google. It's important for Apple too. So.
All right.
Got to get that done.
Yep. Let's get out of here. It's 5:00. It's beer 30 here almost.
Well, was it a 2-hour show for us?
It's a 2-hour show already. So yes, I hope you guys enjoyed it.
And you saw what happened to our listening on the Google podcast.
Oh my God.
It falls off fast.
That's horrible. But I think we're going to keep, of course, we're going to have to make sure in the show notes they know that the Google discussion starts 30 minutes in. Right. So did I give the We Are podcast guy too much of a hard time?
Maybe a little bit.
A little.
But that's only, that's what people expect from us.
That's right. So. And I had to tease the Google guys a little bit too. So I hope they didn't get annoyed.
Well, yeah.
Hey, Apple.
Well, I did actually raise the whole feed burner topic with them, which I was a little scared to bring up. But
so, hey, Apple, where's the Google app?
Right.
Hey,
darn, if only we could get on the Apple guys to come on here and talk about what they're going to do on Android.
Poke the bear. All of a sudden, I find I'm no longer on Apple Podcast. Damn, the new media show's gone. Delisted.
Right. Oh boy.
We love you, Apple. Don't get us wrong.
Right.
We just want the best for the podcast community. But Google's busy.
Ben and James, thank you so much for all the stuff you do for us.
Yeah.
Right.
And and much kudos again is Zach or Robin. If you both are watching, kudos for coming on. We appreciate it, and that you trust us to be on the show.
Right.
I do want to say that for sure.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Todd at blueberry.com, at Geek News on Twitter.
I'm at Rob Greenlee with 2 E's on Twitter. And you can send me an email if you want to reach out, robg@libsyn.com.
And if you're watching on the new media show site, there's a subscribe bar on the side. Just make sure you're subscribed. I'm going to do like the YouTuber. Go subscribe. Yeah. Hopefully I'm pointing the right way.
And post in the comments.
Right. And let us know. We want to hear from you. And anyway, so thanks everyone. We'll see you next time here on the New Media Show. Take care.
Okay. Bye.